I'm going to go ahead and get started introducing myself and introducing the session that we have for you here today. So welcome everyone to Appian World. My name is Kevin Visco. I'm the group product lead for process automation and RPA. And today's session is about complete automation. And we're going to talk to you about the fastest, easiest path to get there. My experience is I've been with Appian about 6 months. But I'm really excited about this session because before Appian, I actually led process automation COEs, the RPA COE at Amazon for HR operations, and I also led the smart automation COE at Procter & Gamble. So I have a lot of experience with RPA and trying to implement it and other automation capabilities and toolboxes. So for me, it's been a journey to try to get to the idea of end-to-end process automation and complete automation. So today what we're going to talk about is really kind of three objectives for us in this session. The first is we're going to talk about some process automation trends, and that's leading us to the idea of complete automation. So we'll share some trends with you, and then we'll talk about what is complete automation or how we define it at Appian, and what that means, the context of that. And then we'll do a showcase of complete automation capabilities within Appian. And it truly is a showcase. We have 25 minutes. And so complete automation, when they said to me, hey, Kevin, you need to talk about complete automation, 25 minutes. Okay, well, that's a lot, and a lot of capability in that space that we have. But I'm hopefully give you a good overview of it. And then, of course, if you're interested in other areas, there's other sessions you can dive into. So later today, for instance, if you want to learn a little bit more about RPA, we have a low-code RPA session. So you can go find out more about RPA. And there's a document processing session later on. You can go learn more about IDP. And so hopefully this will kind of get you started on your journey for complete automation. So let's dive right into 6 process automation trends. Why these 6? Well, these are 6 trends that I've seen over the last year or two that have come out of analyst reports, various reports that are in common or consistent, such as Gartner or Forrester and others. But more importantly, with my 6 to 7 years experience in leading process automation, they resonate with me. I've seen these firsthand, experienced them, saw these trends, or have been a part of them as well. The first is, who here has a backlog that is actually shrinking? No one does, right? No one does, right? I think we estimated our burn down for our backlog in my previous role of about 4.5 years. There was no way we were going to get through that backlog. So the demand for resilient processes and automation continues to accelerate. What's even more of a challenge is that those use cases are becoming increasingly complex. There's more tasks in them, there's more variety of tasks, and that's partially too because the focus is shifting from cost savings of automation to other things like quality and customer experience, right? So it's no longer that RPA low-hanging fruit where you can get some benefits there. You need to look at other ways and other components of your process, end-to-end process automation to get that value. The need for the human in the process is critical. If you try to automate without it, it's fraught with issues. Even exception handling, you have to account for how you're going to manage those exceptions. So the processes are becoming the automation increasingly connected and cooperative. You need to have those processes working together. That idea of connectivity is critical. And then more importantly, that connectivity or that integration, the demand is for the system to handle that, right? I spent years where I had people, COE, handling that integration or trying to cobble together that integration. And that adds to tech debt or complexity or cost. So this leads us all to the idea of complete automation. So what is complete automation? How do we define that at Appian? Well, complete automation at Appian is the combination of our native RPA, AI, our smart services, intelligent document processing, business rules, that's going to let you choose the right technology for the right task. You no longer have to compromise in how you're going to optimize or automate something. You can choose the right technology for the right task. If you need RPA, we have RPA. If you need IDP, we have IDP. That's kind of the basis of our complete automation core. But anyone here a fan of This is Spinal Tap? A mockumentary from years ago? Okay, so hopefully someone's going to know the answer to this. Nigel was the guitarist in that show, right? And he actually had these amplifiers, right? And he was bragging about his amplifiers. They didn't just go to 10, right? They were special because they did what? They went to 11, right? And of course, well, why don't you just renumber them to 10? Well, no, these go to 11. So if you take complete automation and you now combine that with people and data, we take that to 11, all right? So maybe a bad analogy, but It really does add more capability and more resilience to your business processes, makes them more robust. And it's not just cobble it together, it's fully integrated, fully unified within your complete automation capabilities. So let me show you an example of what end-to-end automation looked like for me. This is an actual process, is a simplified version of an actual process that we implemented involving time management and payroll. So this was our end-to-end automation process, or what we thought was maybe complete automation at the time. And I'm going to show you it actually was costly to operate. I do have the right tools in the sense that there's a couple steps in this process. Employees enter time card data into an HR system, but then that data needs to be audited and corrected and then updated with additional pay codes. So RPA is not great at doing like business rules processing, right? So we had to have another set of automation that was involving SQL and Python that was doing that, and that was in a separate system. And it would do that, and it would create a file, and that file would then go to AWS S3, and then the RPA would pick up that file at a scheduled time of a day, right? Because what RPA was good at was entering that data into that HR system, which was a legacy system that didn't have APIs. So it could do that job really great. And then the exceptions for that process were basically put into an email file and then sent to our business partners. Simplified version, but an actual process. And many of you may have automation similar to this or have done them previously. Well, there's costs associated with this though, there's problems. First off the bat is I need different developers, right? So my team had to have RPA developers and Python SQL developers. Two different skill sets, two different sets of developers to do that. So I need different developers for my high code automation component. Is the file on time? What happens if that file's not there when RPA comes along? RPA is smart enough to wait, right? No, it's probably going to give you an error. Someone's going to have to go in there and find out what happened to that file. But more importantly, another issue that came up a lot for us was that file has bad errors in it or issues in it. RPA doesn't necessarily be able to do that data validation. That's being done in that SQL process. So it sends that data into that HR system, creates a whole bunch of exceptions. Those exceptions go out to the email. They show up to the business partners. Maybe in a few hours, they get those exceptions. Now we got to figure out where did those problems happen. Did it happen in RPA? Did it happen in the file? There's no kind of feedback loop there on those exception processing. What happens later if that system we have finally becomes modern and has APIs and we want to upgrade it? It was very challenging for us to do. We actually had a goal of deprecating RPA. RPA is fragile. It does great at the tasks it's optimized for, but it has some fragility to it, right? What happens when we truly get to a more digitized environment? We want to upgrade that. Well, the way this process was built, it was harder to do that upgrade. We would have to build that using another set of technologies outside of that RPA system. And the other thing is, we didn't really manage that exception handling very well. Yes, we had humans in the loop. Actually, ironically, they weren't so much in the loop as at the other side of a wall, and we threw the exceptions over to them, and it was done. And then what commonly happened, too, is they would have exceptions, and they would want just small corrections in those exceptions, and then just send the file back to my COE support team, which then recreate the queue in RPA and then rerun the RPA pods. People have done something similar to that, right? We rerun that process. And we would do that and just reprocess that queue. So this process was very, very costly to operate. This was an end-to-end automation, but it was not the best way to do a truly connected, complete automation solution. Appian's approach is a much more unified, better approach to complete automation. And the unification is what makes it critical. It's not just we're connecting the components, we're unifying those components. So specifically, let me explain why I think this is a much better approach. First, going back to the right capabilities for the right tasks. We do have those capabilities. If you have a repetitive process that is interacting with a system without APIs, then you can use a smart service for RPA. So you build your RPA robotic process, you build that in our RPA console, and now you can call that using an automation smart service, execute robotic process, call that in your process model, in your workflow, and you can now use that service. We have the right capability if you want a system that has APIs. You can use integrations. Same thing, an automation smart service, build that integration, call that integration. Intelligent document processing, we have that. But why is our approach even better than just having the right tasks or the right capabilities is the configuration of those automation smart services is the same. the inputs, the outputs, the process variables, the parameters, the way you set them up, the expression rules that you use associated with them is the same. So setting up the smart services is similar. You don't have to learn something different than how you set up the smart service for RPA versus how you do it for IDP. In addition, it's all supported by our low code. So there's low code in RPA. We have low code RPA. We have a session later talked about all the low code capabilities and actions you can do in RPA. So if you know the low code environment, whether you're setting up your integration or API integration or where you're setting up your RPA, you can do the same low code capabilities there. So we have that right capability, but even better this way. People and data also, second important part of our process, is they're not just at the center or in the loop, they're everywhere throughout your process. You can integrate human tasks, interfaces, data all throughout. So if you design a process and the data needs to be used as part of the workflow, then you can call that data using data smart services within the workflow within your process model. But if the RPA robotic process as it's running needs that data, then you can actually call that data within your robotic process. So the data and the humans in the loop are all throughout your process. They're unified, not just in one part or the other. And then finally, the systems integration, that sixth bullet, remember from our process automation trends, that system integration is being handled by you. We have the process modeler, which is a powerful orchestration tool. You can have all those smart services in that process. So that scenario I talked to you before, where we had data errors in that file, we can account for that in our process model. Or if we have issues in the process model, we know much, much quicker where those issues or errors occurred by looking at the process model logs. So it's a much better approach. So I'm going to share with you 3 kind of strategies to think about when you're approaching complete automation in Appian. So we'll look at kind of 3 specific problems and solutions and the strategies that you can use, hopefully give you a little bit of kind of guidance on thinking about some of these complete automation capabilities whenever you're building an automation solution. The first is plan for humans in control of the process right from the start. So exception handling in RPA, do that in your process modeler. So build that in using interfaces and task management capabilities. We have extremely robust ability to manage the exceptions, much better, I think, than other capabilities. It's not secondary to the automation, it's part of the automation. It's unified in there. That also allows you to do some creative things with that exception handling. For instance, you could potentially build variables in your robotic process that when you have processes throughout the robotic flow, then you could collect data as you go, and then when you handle those exceptions back in your process model or using variables that you pass to it, then the exceptions that you pass to your business partners could be very specific in terms of the instructions you provide them of what they need to do. It's not simply, here's a list of things you need to fix, but here's 5 things where this is a problem, you need to fix that. Here's 4 things that are a problem, you can fix that. So you can be very, very specific in your exception handling. The other thing to think about, the second thing to think about, our strategy approaching complete automation in Appian, is to approach your process by looking at the tasks and skills associated with that process and optimizing them for the complete automation capabilities that we have. Definitely look at all the tasks that are in there. Don't take, in some cases we have customers that bring an RPA process to us and want to simply transfer it over to Appian RPA. But we tell them to take the opportunity to look at that process today to see what components in that process would be better served with other automation capabilities with Appian, such as our email. So instead of using RPA to send email, we have a smart service that could send the email, and you could start to break those components out of the RPA and just use RPA for what RPA is good at, which is interacting with that website that doesn't have a modern digital interface or integration. So those are capabilities that you can begin to look at your process from a task standpoint and break that up and match that up to our automation capabilities. Use the right task with the right skill with the right smart automation service. So if you need document processing, use IDP. Don't use RPA for that. If you need, again, an API, if you have an API or a more modern system where we have a connected system, use that and not RPA. And then you can stitch them together to create your whole end-to-end process flow. And finally, you can think about digitization in an evolutionary way. You can optimize later. it is very easy to do. I'll show you a demo here at the end when you think about, okay, if I have a system today, and this is a very common scenario where you want to automate a site. It doesn't have an API. Or at some point, it may have an API, but it's going to be a year or two from now. And you're thinking, well, should I automate it now? Should I wait for that API? You can automate it today, for instance, using RPA. So you build that RPA process, you call it from that robotic service, and then you put in the request for your API. And you design your process, you design the end-to-end flow very modular. Use all the capabilities of Appian that are there. Use the data structures, use variables in such a way that you've basically compartmentalized or you've set up a composable process where that RPA is just going to the website with the data that you pass to it, doing its work, finishing up. And then later, when you have an API, you now go ahead and build an integration for that API. You put that integration into a call integration smart service, and you basically delete the smart service for RPA. Pass it the same parameters of hopefully you've requested and designed it in such a way that the endpoints that you're passing to and from that API are the same. Just match those up to the same process variables that you had. And you actually see that in the demo that I built a little bit later. And so you can go ahead and automate now, knowing that maybe you're not ready for the digital future, you don't have a completely digitized platform, you have legacy systems, maybe some legacy, some modern, that's okay. You can do that now and then upgrade that later. So those are 3 strategies to think about when you're looking at complete automation and leveraging the capabilities that Appian has and automation smart services. You may have seen this kind of case management process that we show here for automation. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I do want to show you a demo video instead that shows you another process, but it's actually in our process modeler to highlight some of these capabilities. But this shows you the potential to mix these automation smart services into a unified, fully connected end-to-end process. So this is an order management process. It's using some RPA, 2 different RPAs. It's perfectly fine. We create a robotic process, 2 different robotic processes. We use 2 automation smart services to call those separately. One of them is actually getting the retrieved purchase order from the ERP system. The other is actually loading data into SAP. We also have an integration with an API for our Salesforce that's doing that because that's available to us there. We have IDP doing the classification and extracting the data from the purchase order, and of course we have exception handling in there. So if there's an issue that needs to be resolved by a person, they can handle the exception. We're storing that all in the data, which goes back to that composability that I mentioned, right? It makes it easy in the sense that all the information associated with that process is now in that data store, which if later on down the road I want to replace one of those 2 integrations, it's very easy to do because then all I have to do is link that data that's flowing from the data records to that smart service. So let me show you this in action. All right, this is our process modeler. Who's familiar with the Appian process modeler? Some of you may be new, so this is okay. You can actually see the swim lanes here. I've got robotic tasks, I've got APIs, some artificial intelligence in there, human workflow. This is actually a simplified version of an actual process that we had in my previous role that were in Europe, our sites in Europe, the associate, the employees did not have access to terminals to be able to enter their leave data. So they still had to fill out paper forms, and they would drop it off at the HR desk, and then HR would manually enter that data. Obviously very manually intensive. So we automated to where they would scan in those forms, and when you use a form of IDP to get that data from that and then load that data into our HR system. So this process is a simplified version of that. You can see down here we have a sub-process under robotic tasks that's actually running RPA to get that file. That file then is going through the artificial intelligence or IDP process. Again, these are all automation smart services. There's actually exceptions in there, 2 different type of exception processes linked in here. Again, humans all throughout the process, not just in one area or the other. We actually check to see if the leave is approved. So we get the approval of the leave. And then we also check if there's any exceptions once we load that leave data into our HR system. We're using RPA. That's an execute robotic process down here that's being used. And then once that's entered, we're finished with the process. So I just want to I'll show you this in action here because we're going to show you some new things that we also have in the process modeler. We've now organized the palette for automation smart services to make it more intuitive of all the smart services I shared with you and just explore that to just see the wealth of automation capabilities that you have. We also have a new capability that when you actually search for and design object, so if I build an API integration now, and I actually search for that, and you'll see us in this demo search it, when you get that, you can drag it onto the palette and it actually automatically creates a call integration smart service for you, pre-configured, ready to go. You can go in there, modify it a little bit, and you'll see that here in this process. So let me go ahead and go through this. Again, it's showing the different swim lanes that we have in this process. So we're doing human workflow, AI. We're going to add an API here in just a minute. And then we have our robotic tasks. Again, we've organized now based on the automation smart services, so it makes it more intuitive, integrations and APIs in one area. I'm actually going to search now for that API. I actually put API in the name. That's actually the integration. That's not the actual smart service. And then I drag the integration out on the palette. It's now a smart service, automatic. I changed the name of it. Because I've made this composable, I'm using variables to pass to the RPA, and those are the same variables I set up in my integration. So it's actually all I have to do, and I'm not going to have this video show every single one of these, but it's just to highlight the fact that all I have to do now is remap all these process variables to that integration. That was the same variables that were being passed to RPA, the exact same ones. The difference was that it would kick off the robotic process and then the RPA bot would do that. Well, now the integration is going to do that. So I'm going to drag that in here. I'm going to get rid of that approval. There's a few things here that you would still have to set up other than the integration itself too. Is you notice I do monitor in this demo the success variable from both the RPA and the integration. I use the exact same success variable to determine if the process was successful, so I didn't have to change that. But if I were doing more exception handling, I may have to go in there and change that a little bit more on what error was coming back, because you may get different types of errors that are coming back from your integration versus what are coming back from your robotic process. So you may want to actually change how you do the error handling there a little bit and the exception management. And that's it. I just now am entered the digital age. Now I still have an RPA process down there at the bottom in my sub-process, but I've now just replaced that robotic process with an API. So this is the power of a truly unified connected system. Again, our automation smart services use the same configuration for inputs, outputs, and variables. So if you design your process in such a way that you break those parts up into those tasks that we talked about, you definitely make it much, much easier to add and improve and optimize your process in the future. Okay, so that was a pretty quick whirlwind, 22 minutes of complete automation, but I do encourage you, if you want to learn a little bit more about integrations, if you want to learn a little bit more about RPA, we have more detailed sessions on those specific automation capabilities throughout today and tomorrow. We also have this program, which I'm a part of. This basically gives you instant access to a product manager. It's called our Kickstart program. So if you are interested in getting started with automation, highly encourage this program. It's a combination of usually with sales, CS, and a PM. We have a PM that will be assigned to a Kickstart customer, so I have 4 or 5 Kickstart customers that I work with, and we're there to help you get started with automation, to think through these things that we just talked about, how to really approach automation in Appian in the optimal way. So we do have a couple minutes for questions, so if there are any, go ahead and take those. I apologize for my dry mouth. Do we have any questions? We have a mic here coming around.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Alamin Hussain. So my question is like, how far Appian already go or went for the AI perspective?
Pardon?
So how far Appian is currently go for Appian perspective? So for AI perspective.
For API connectivity, is that your answer?
Like kind of AI.
AI, oh, AI. Yeah, right now, most of the AI capabilities that we have are related to document processing. So we have the document extraction right now, or IDP, and then they're now on the roadmap for document classification. And then they're also working on AI skills to be able to plug and play AI capabilities. And again, because of our modular approach, we can continue. You'll see under AI, we have just a few smart services now, but we'll continue to add more and more AI smart services. They'll all be set up in the exact same way. They'll have the same approach to be able to create those. But right now, most of our AI capability is in the document extraction and classification capabilities.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And there is a document processing session, I think, around 3 o'clock today. they could go into a lot more detail on that capability. Any other questions? And if we run out of time here, you can just grab me outside in the hall as well.
So you mentioned document classification and AI in there. Where we have run into challenges is the natural language processing.
Yeah,
Or the classification.
we don't have NLP today, but that was a big topic yesterday in some sessions we've had. So all I can tell you is, yes, we're definitely interested in looking at that capability, but we don't have that NLP.
Nothing on the roadmap just yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. We're right at time. Perfect. Again, thank you. Don't forget to evaluate the session in your app. And again, if you do have questions, I'll stick around outside there for a few minutes. So if you have some specific questions that you want to ask, I'll be around for them. So thank you.